Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary, Chief of the Air Staff, former Chief of the Air Staffs, Mr. Parthasathi, Air Marshal A.K. Chopra, Director General Center for Air Power Studies, Mr. Sanjay Baru, who's been a founder trustee, distinguished air officers, the family of Air Commodore Jasjit Singh, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a rare privilege to be here with you to deliver the 6th Jasjit Singh Memorial Lecture on India as an emerging global power, opportunities and challenges. I'm aware that this audience needs no introduction to Padma Bhushan Air Commodore Jasjit Singh, Veer Chakra, Vayu Sena Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, but on this occasion, recounting his contribution to the Indian strategic community, if only to pay tribute to a great son of India, is, I believe, truly befitting. As a young squadron leader, his legendary exploits during the 1970 operations destroyed Pakistani armor, artillery, and gun positions in the face of daunting ground fire, which earned him the coveted Veer Chakra. 2 years later, he was awarded the Vayu Sena Medal for devotion to duty. 10 years later, in 1984, he was decorated with the Ati Vishishta Seva Medal for seamlessly integrating new induction aircrafts such as fighter aircrafts, Mirage 2000 and MiG-27, Mi-25 attack helicopters, and a transport aircraft, AN-32, which to my mind requires professionalism of the highest order. In 1987, he took over as the Director General of the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, which he led until 2001. And during this period, he authored numerous books and edited volumes, lectured in various think tanks across the world, and was an integral part of the strategic community of India at the apex level, particularly on higher defense organization, air power, and nuclear issues. In his various articles, he has been constructively critical on the lack of jointness and inadequate understanding of the role air power can play in combat. After leaving the ITSA, he set up and directed the Center for Air Power Studies for 12 years. In his new role, not only did he continue with the national security studies, but also brought a sharp focus on the changing role of the Indian Air Force. And he emphasized that India's aspiration to be a space power due to the growing importance of space in India's national security was critical. His contribution was recognized by the government, and he was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2006. To my mind, his edited volume on the case for indigenization for the Indian Air Force, published in 2011, is clearly reflective of the far-sightedness and commitment of Air Commodore Jasjit Singh. We are now seeing the outcome of his vision as domestic capability to design and build fighter aircraft, helicopters, UAVs, short-range reconnaissance aircraft, which are fundamental to national power, become part of the Indian inventory. The Make in India in defense is now gaining momentum. And this raises the question as to what are the elements of national power and how these are intrinsically interrelated in a spatial, temporal, or societal context in which one element dominates the other. National power has seen many definitions and interpretations. The history of the Peloponnesian War remains a source of enduring utility to understand national power in its most brutal form, which is imposing the will of one nation on another. Kautilya suggests Sam, Dand, Dam, Bhed as instruments to exercise state power either domestically or externally. Machiavelli in The Prince extolled power to be exercised on the foundational principle that ends justifies the mean. And it is said that Chairman Mao once said that power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Various other discourses and narratives clutter the concept of national power. There are further distinctions in the geopolitical context between sub-regional, regional, major, and global and superpowers emerge. A common understanding is that major powers are those that are self-reliant in producing and maintaining their arsenal and have a capability of projecting appreciable military force in areas beyond their immediate geography to further their own objectives or of the interest of their allies. Regional powers are capable of employing military power within their region using a mix of indigenous and imported weapons and systems to achieve their own political objectives, and may at best be an ally to a major power. But what is power itself? This has been famously defined as the means, the strength, or capacity that provides the ability to influence the behavior of other actors in accordance with one's own objectives. In its most simplistic concept, power is an ability of a state to exercise sovereignty in making decisions that are in its own national interest. And national power once comprised of military and economic power. The military power of the state, as has been demonstrated over the last few decades, was not just the sum total of its military assets, the manpower, tanks, artillery, aircraft, ships, and submarine, but increasingly states' military industrial complex that could support its military with the best-in-class fighting gear. This introduced several other sub-elements of military power. First, technological skills and infrastructure to design, and that is critical, and build superior weapons and systems. Second, a robust supply chain that would feed the defense industrial complex. For example, seamless availability of semiconductors and critical materials required for production of advanced military equipment and systems. Thirdly, as has often been said, quantity has a quality of its own, and therefore the capacity of the national defense industrial complex to scale up production when required is another element of military power. Fourthly, appropriately qualified personnel who can operate, maintain, and sustain sophisticated equipment and also be proficient in the art of war. Finally, an appropriate higher defense organization that can orchestrate and organize high-tech battle, maintain high morale of the troops, and at the same time manage to keep the peace so that the national interest of prosperity of the people and progress of the nation continues unfettered. Military power, to my mind, is critical for the state. This power is exercised by the armed forces for causes that the political leadership requires. When exercised at sea, it is sea power. When exercised over land, it is military power. And when exercised leveraging the medium of the air, it is air power, or as I mentioned earlier, aerospace power. While land and sea power are in the exclusive domain of the Army and the Navy, aerospace power is utilized by all the three services for varying objectives, and there is no objective of war or peace that does not require aerospace power to achieve it. This audience is well aware of the elements of aerospace power and its characteristics of ubiquity and mobility that contribute to the design of battle and successful prosecution of war. So while the earlier applications of air power hovered around core combat, the support functions of the airlift, it's very important to understand that air power does not stop there. Long-range intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance functions are most effectively carried out by specialized aircrafts and UAVs, and it is their informed inputs combined with analytics that finally support the commander on the ground. But to my mind, it's very important that today it does not stop here either. Aerospace power also serves various civilian objectives in stressed situations of rescue of Indian and other nationals from war zones and strife-torn areas, providing relief through timely supply of materials. As we saw during the COVID pandemic, the stellar role that air power played in obtaining LOX tanks, oxygen generators from friendly countries, and also delivering protective clothing and vaccines to other countries. More recently, the evacuation of the Indian diaspora from Ukraine and Sudan, among many other locations, illustrated the application of air power for a non-combat role. Therefore, the applications of aerospace power have continued to evolve and grow, much like Air Commodore Jasjit Singh had envisaged. In fact, the application of aerospace power will continue to enlarge as he had envisaged. Let me touch upon the other elements of national power. Economic power is well understood, and its essential components are the means of production, that it is nation's stock of capital, the quality and quantity of labor, and access of ownership of resources. In practice, national GDP defines economic power, and it presupposes that access to resources can be gained through capital. Many of you are aware, and as you all know, the coming decade is, in my view, poised to be India's decade. We've become the 5th largest economy and will be the 3rd largest economy by 2030, overtaking Germany and Japan. And this will be possible due to several key factors, which to my mind are, firstly, a strong growth across manufacturing and exports of goods and services, strong macroeconomic fundamentals that India has displayed. Thirdly, we have been a very good global destination for both foreign direct investment and foreign FPIs as well. Fourthly, to my mind, demographics are in our favor. Almost 70% of India's global population is in the working age group of 15 to about 40. More than half, and this is an unknown statistics, but the latest NFHS survey says that more than half of India's population will now comprise of women. And to my mind, what is critical is that in the last 6 to 7 years, major structural reforms have been carried out, such as GST, the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, the Real Estate Regulation Act, redefinition of the medium and small-scale industry, ease of doing business, scrapping of almost 1,500 outdated laws. And these are reforms which were pending for almost 4 to 5 decades. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've really pushed the reform period, and along with digitalization and the digital public infrastructure that India has built up as an international organization, the Bank of International Settlement has said that India has achieved in the last 7 to 8 years what it would normally have taken 50 years to achieve. We are also doing the G20. We are hosting the G20. And the G20 comprises of about 20 countries, the 90 countries and the European Union, which comprise of about almost 85% of the global GDP. They comprise of almost 75% of the global trade. They account for almost 2/3 of the global population. And this body today, in the face of the United Nations becoming dysfunctional and unwieldy, continues to address major issues related to the global economy, international financial stability. It focuses on growth, energy transition, and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, India's G20 presidency has been very different from any other country. In many other countries, G20 is restricted to one city. In India's case, it was decided by the Prime Minister that we'll do it in every single state of India. We'll do it across almost 65 different cities. So what we've seen is that this G20 presidency has actually been driven by the states, by the people, and it's actually provided it's a unique way of ensuring that it is a people's presidency in many ways. We've been challenged in this G20 presidency. This has provided us opportunities and challenges. The challenge is of, if you look around the world, there is a challenge of global slowdown. Almost 1/3 of the world is facing a recession. Germany has just gone into recession. Almost 75% of the global countries, 75 countries are facing a global debt crisis. There's a crisis of climate action and climate finance. And on top of all this, there is a geopolitical crisis with the continuing Russia-Ukraine war. There's an alarming energy crisis. And in the face of all this, we've had the post-COVID era where we've seen about 200 million people go below poverty line and almost 100 million people losing their jobs. But every crisis is also an opportunity. And to my mind, this G20 is a huge, huge opportunity, not merely for India, but for the rest of the global world. We are totally committed to democracy and multilateralism. India's G20 presidency would be a watershed moment in its history as it seeks to play an important role by finding pragmatic global solutions through its in the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or one earth, one family, one future. The challenges that we face today can only be solved by working together, and therefore we need to focus. We've focused in a big way on the global south, and we are pursuing an inclusive, ambitious, decisive, and action-oriented agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that to spell out the priorities, one of which is that we need to push, at this particular moment of time, India needs to take the lead in pushing for accelerated, inclusive, and sustainable growth. We are pushing in a very big way at the midway point of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal agenda. The world has, instead of progressing, regressed. Only 12% of the 167 targets of outcomes of SDG are on target. Others, we are way behind, and therefore we are pushing for accelerated progress on sustainable development goals. We are pushing for technology transformation and digital public infrastructure, because that's what India has built and has paid rich dividend. We are pushing for multilateral institutions for 21st century, and we are pushing for green development, climate finance, and lifestyle for sustainability. And lastly, a women-led development. And I'll briefly dwell upon some of these issues in a brief manner. Ladies and gentlemen, India has taken leaps and bounds in the penetration of the digital public infrastructure. We've built up a unique model of open source, open API, interoperable digital public infrastructure, which have paid us rich dividend. We've seen during the COVID period, we could use DPIs to provide COVID vaccination to 2.2 billion people. We have been able to, today, provide a digital identity for every single Indian. We've been able to provide bank accounts to vast segments of our population, and during 2015 and 2017, 550 million bank accounts were opened. Every second bank account opened in the world, and 55% of the bank account opened in the world during this period were opened in India. And therefore, we went on to then link both the digital identity and the mobile number with this bank account, which has enabled India to do about, today, we do about 46% of the real-time digital payments in the world. We do 11x more digital payments than what Europe and United States do. We do 4x more than what China does. And we've demonstrated the unique power of digital public infrastructure. And we've used to show that technologically India can leapfrog. We've actually pole vaulted digitally in many, many ways. And during the COVID period, we could provide a direct benefit transfer to 800 million Indians without a single paisa of leakage. Today, in 600 schemes of the government of India, we put money straight into the bank accounts of our beneficiaries without sending it. When I was a young officer, this money used to go from center to state, from state to district, and to panchayats, and there was a huge amount of leakage. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we've done is a massive amount of transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also, in many ways, the digital technology has been a critical driver. Technologies today are blurring the boundaries between our physical, digital, and biological worlds with innovation in areas of big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and they are reshaping the world around us. As I said, the result of the powerful jam trinity of Jan Dhan bank accounts and biometric has been enormous. We've demonstrated this through payments, through fast payments. But fast payments, if you look around the world, over 4 billion people of the world do not have a digital identity. Over 3 billion people do not even have a bank account. Over 133 countries do not have fast payments. And therefore, we need to take it to the global south and make a difference to the life of citizens in those countries. But what has India done beyond payments? With payment problems solved, the focus then shifted towards lending to both consumers and MSMEs, and lending paperless, cashless. And fintech has allowed innovation in a very big way, because when we started the Startup India movement in 2016, there were only 156 startups. Today we have over 101,000, over 101,000 startups in India, over 110 unicorns. And what fintech did, and what the digital identity did, was that fintech allowed innovation, allowing new models to come up on flow-based lending. And that means paperless, cashless lending. And you could see new startups like Lending Card, Pine Labs, MobiKwik, all lending which was paperless, cashless. And then with sufficient comfort and payment and lending, there was an increased focus towards personal finance, money management, investment and trading. And you had a plethora of top-class startups coming up in this space. So Zerodha, Grow, Upstart, they created an ecosystem of modern investment apps reaching out to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, rural areas. And a young startup like Zerodha today controls almost 30% of India's stock market, reaching out to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And then, in the next stage, what we witnessed was the emergence of financial products which targeted the more complex segments. So you had new insurance technology companies, new startups such as GoDigit and Acco, which simplified insurance, covering end-to-end life cycle of origination, underwriting, claims, selection. So what have we seen in India? Digital identity, bank accounts, linking the bank accounts with Aadhaar and mobile number, fast payments, credit, wealth creation in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, and what we are seeing is insurance in 30 seconds flat. So what did India do differently? And what India has done is to create, unlike the big tech model of USA, where if you've seen all the innovation that has happened in the last 2.5 decades, has come from the big tech, from Google, from Apple, from Microsoft, from Amazon in the western part of the world. And in China, you've just 1 or 2 companies which have driven the model of innovation there. But all this has happened because they could use the data of individual citizens. In India, we created the public layer based on public interest, on top of which we've allowed private sector to innovate. So through public-private partnership and an enabling policy ecosystem, we've ushered in a new era. And therefore, we believe that to drive progress, these young startups have designed, they have delivered solution, and the youth possesses an innate entrepreneurial spirit driven by their aspirations, resilience, and willingness to take risks. The rise in the development and adoption of DPI in the last few years and a substantial growth in the wake of COVID-19 for delivering essential public services and financial inclusion of the marginalized, particularly women and girls, holds immense potential. When we started the bank accounts, only 17% of the women in India had bank accounts. Today, 86% of the women have bank accounts. And therefore, what technology has done is to remarkably change lives of citizens in India. Ladies and gentlemen, the other key focus is the infrastructure that India has built up in the last few years. It's important to understand that we've built up close to about 40 million houses. And 40 million houses means that we built houses for the entire population of Australia. That's just more than the population of Australia. We've provided toilets to about 110 million citizens of India. Toilets to 110 million citizens means that we've provided toilets to the entire population of Germany. We provided piped water connection to 243 million Indians, which is like providing water connection to every single citizen of Brazil. But we've built over 55,000 kilometers of national highway, which is almost 1.5 times the diameter of Earth. We've provided electricity connection to every single village of India, and therefore the infrastructure build-up has been critical. And I think in the last 3 years, India's capital outlay has increased by 150%, which is important. It's important to dwell a little bit on the defense sector as well, because India is steadily broadening its ambition in the defense sector. from being heavily reliant on military imports. Since its independence, we are now witnessing the fruits of the Make in India initiative. Defense exports have reached an all-time high, and I think the remarkable 23-fold increase reflects India's progress in the global defense manufacturing sector. To give a push to defense exports, we've taken a number of policy initiatives and brought reforms over the last 9 years. Export procedures have been simplified and made industry-friendly with end-to-end online export authorization, curtailing delays and bringing ease of doing business. Overall, defense production has breached the 1 lakh crore mark. Ladies and gentlemen, while India makes strides towards being self-reliant in this domain, we are also creating more partnership with G20 countries such as France. Apart from the deals on the Rafale combat jets to India, we are also now working on advanced aeronautical technologies through the joint development of a combat aircraft engine. India is also the fastest growing aviation market in the world and the 3rd biggest market globally in terms of the domestic traffic, according to International Air Transport Aviation studies. Orders for aircraft by Indian carriers have created new records. I mean, just look at Indian carriers. Indigo's 500 aircraft deal with Airbus. And when you couple this with Air India's recent orders of 470 aircraft with Airbus and Boeing, means we've ordered about 1,000 aircraft. And these 2 deals cumulatively, this has not happened anywhere else in the world. And they ensure that India is now 2nd in the list of carriers, having the largest aircraft order book behind the United States. The annual passenger capacity in the 6 major metropolitan cities of India is likely to nearly double to 420 million passengers by 2030. And therefore, we have to create new aviation hubs in several Tier 2, Tier 3, and rural areas. The most number of female pilots in the world are in India. And as the sector grows, the number of opportunities for women and youth will only increase manyfold. The development of technology will be a key factor in determining the direction in many of these areas. And therefore, my belief is that India must adapt to new technologies, absorb them, and become key drivers of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, AR, VR, blockchain, big data. No other country has this opportunity of big data, which India has, because our size and scale is enormous. And when India finds solutions to the challenges of India on health, education, nutrition, it is not finding a solution for its own population, but for the next 4 billion people who are moving from poverty to middle class. And therefore, there's a huge opportunity to use AI and machine learning to maximize operational effectiveness, cut costs. And therefore, these are all metrics on which our national power stands. Beginning with the military power, India has the 4th largest army, the 5th largest air force, and the 7th largest Navy, equipped with increasingly domestically designed and produced platforms, weapons, and systems. Economically, India is now the 5th largest economy. Its informational power is well known, and its engineers are amongst the best in the world. We are developing outstanding innovative products and services. Diplomatically, India holds the G20 presidency, the SCO presidency, and until December 2022 was a non-permanent member of the UNSC and its president twice in its tenure. It is an invitee to the ASEAN Forum, the G7 Summit, and as a bilateral annual summit meeting with the EU. India's worldview is captured in the G20 summit by one line: one earth, one family, one future. Militarily, I'm sure that the Indian Armed Forces, increasingly equipped with Indian design systems and platforms, are second to none and will remain the bulwark of national security and maintain its territorial integrity. Economically, India is well on its way to a formal $5 trillion economy. Technologically, I'm a great believer that India's achievements have been totally astounding, and our startups and scientists regularly have surprised the world with new inventions and world-beating products. As I said, we have a digital identity for all Indians. We've hugely leapfrogged technologically. The success of Jam Trinity and digital payment means that India has made significant strides, and it's been accepted all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the Asian growth experience has shown us that a transformation within a generation is entirely possible. This was done by Japan post-World War II. This was done by Korea. This was done by Taiwan, and in recent times by China. India faces several challenges which countries who grew earlier did not. First, the developed countries of today, including those in Asia, grew through carbonizing their economies. Fossil fuels were burned to the point that we are now facing a climate catastrophe. India has to drive a growth model that does not rely on carbonization, as these countries have in the past. And this presents an opportunity for India to establish itself as a market leader in the green industrial revolution. And that is something which I think India must emerge as the first country in the world to become a great manufacturing nation without carbonizing the world. And this would again mean that we have to technologically leapfrog. Secondly, digital technologies are proliferating like never before. The countries best able to leverage these technologies will be the most competitive in the future. And I think India has the lead in this regard. Thirdly, the global trade environment is likely going to be different to the environment in which the Asian countries grew. The multilateral trading order has been weakening, and countries are increasingly relying on bilateral agreements to drive trade and growth. Given these challenges, the future avenues of growth must be seized by India to usher in our economic transformation. The new economy that is emerging post-COVID will, to my mind, be both digital and be green. We must ensure that India is at the forefront of this revolution. Industrial competitiveness will now be determined by green and digital processes. To carve out a share in global value chains, ensuring our competitiveness by being both digital and green will be critical. The world is increasingly demanding high-quality, high-technology products with minimal carbon footprint. Several lessons emerge for India navigating this new economy. First, tech adoption is a must. Secondly, we must be ready to take risks and venture into the unknown. Third, we must strive to be the best in the world, not just in India, because mediocrity will not help us take anywhere, and you have to become a global champion, and therefore excellence has to be the key. Fourthly, we must fully leverage the economic opportunities offered by economic reforms that have been ushered in. Fifthly, I'm a great believer that we must pursue sunrise areas of growth, and these are, to my mind, advanced chemistry cell batteries, semiconductors, electric mobility, and green hydrogen. And these are areas which will put us into a very fast track of growth, because these are the sectors which will drive global economies, and India must capture a major share of this growing and advancing sectors. And sixthly, we need to establish links with startups and mainstream tech-based solutions across the supply chain. And finally, I'm a believer that it's not just hard power, but also the soft power of India, which is critical. And therefore, India needs to establish a brand that is defined by both innovation and sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, according to a recent report by Morgan Stanley, there are 4 trends that are shaping the global order: demographics, digitalization, deglobalization, and decarbonization. India stands to the benefit from all 4 of these trends. While the world is aging, India is the youngest country in the world. India's public digital infrastructure has placed it favorably in the digital era, while other countries lag behind and are unprepared for the digital disruptions. While the world is resorting to protectionism, India is increasingly aligning itself with global value chains. And finally, strong commitment to climate action, as India has demonstrated with 175 gigawatt of green power and with a new green hydrogen mission. It is increasingly becoming a leader in the decarbonization space. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, as the Morgan Stanley report says, the next decade is poised to be India's decade, with India becoming the 3rd largest economy by 2027 and the 3rd largest stock market by 2030. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, India is truly in the Amrit Kal, and we are destined to be a global power. Ladies and gentlemen, this needs both humility as well as ambition. It needs ambition to get into new areas of growth. It needs humility to work with people all around and to work with other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, the future looks exciting, and India is poised to leapfrog technologically. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.